How does karma work? So here's another video. So in a previous video, I made titled "The Eastern Worldview: Karma and Natural Disasters." I looked at how would the Eastern worldview respond to, say, a hurricane, tornadoes, and natural disasters, things like that. And I looked at 13 sources from Hinduism, Buddhism, and Theosophy. So you can check that out on YouTube, Eastern Worldview, Karma and Natural Disasters. So here's just some of the sources that I looked at. A number were from Hindu sources. Here's one, Path to Shiva, Catechism for Youth. This was from the Shaivite tradition. A video by Swami Tadatmananda of the Arshabodha Center, titled Doctrine of Karma, Part 3. A book by Swami Shivananda titled Karma and Diseases, which basically lists the different things you've done in your past life that created negative karma, and now you're suffering various diseases in your current life because of that. The Garuda Purana, this is one of the 18 major Hindu Puranas. A book titled Karma, the Ancient Science of Cause and Effect. Article from Hinduism Today magazine titled Coping with Negative Events. Satguru was responding to questions from fellow Hindus about they're having trouble dealing with certain negative situations that came into their lives. This is another publication by the Himalayan Academy titled Karma Management. A book by Mr. Puja Dadashri titled The Science of Karma. Here's the one article from a Theosophical website. There is no injustice. And the next are from a couple of Buddhist sources. Here's a website by a Tibetan Buddhist monk named Bhante Dhammika, in an article titled Buddhism and Natural Disasters. Another article, website, Does Karma Cause Natural Disasters? Here's a PDF of a talk by a Buddhist studies professor, Richard P. Hayes, gave at Leiden University in the Netherlands, titled Is There Such a Thing as Collective Karma? And an article titled Collective Karma and Natural Disasters by a Tibetan Buddhist practitioner, Dr. Berzin. So here's just a description of how these various sources describe karma and how it works. So they describe it as a law, just like gravity, that governs the reaction of thoughts, words, and deeds, and no divine being is involved. So the key thing, it's a law. Like gravity, and is also defined as eternal, so it's always existed and immutable and never changing. So somehow this law of karma has always been there. Defined it as an automatic system of divine justice. So this law, like gravity, is somehow meting out justice, which is some type of ethical, judgments. How does that actually work? Saw this a number of times, described as what we sow, we will reap. Swami Tadatmananda said that you were born because of your past karma, and this is a basic principle of karma. And he also made the statement that you had no first birth, and you were born with an infinite number of karmas and lives. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So you had no first birth. All the bad things you suffer in your life are because of your self-created karma. Your self-created karma. You are wholly and solely responsible. So when a person gets shot, or we could replace shot with anything in this box, robbed, raped, car accident, he is suffering the effect of his past life's karma. You caused your loss. The thief, the robber, the rapist is just the instrument for returning your karma to you. And there are no innocent victims, and there is no injustice. This is from the Theosophical website. Basically, someone had commented at the bottom asking questions about what about the Nigerian schoolgirls who were captured by Boko Haram and raped, or innocent children who were raped Are they innocent victims? And basically the answer was yes, because we don't know what they did in their past lives. It must have been something so heinous to cause them to be suffering what they're suffering in their current life. And again, this isn't just my thoughts on it. This is from these 13 sources that actually believe in this doctrine of karma. The Himalayan Academy, I think it was in the PDF book, said to accept responsibility and don't blame others for the suffering you're going through. And so there are two examples given. One was the story of Swami Shivananda, who's sitting in a chair talking to some of his followers, and a man comes up from behind, wielding a hatchet, trying to kill him. But his followers are able to subdue him, and then he's eventually arrested and put in jail. But the Swami goes to visit him and basically gets him released because he says the man was just doing his karmic duty. It's from my self-created karma. He was trying to kill me, so he's innocent, and I'm not going to blame him. And the story goes on to say that he eventually got the man released from jail, bought him a ticket so he could return back to his hometown. There's a similar story of a woman who had her purse stolen. You see an illustration of her with a thief running off with her purse, but then she remembers, I'm just basically getting what I deserve because in the past I stole something from someone. So this is just a payback of my karmic debt. It was described as karma which has been made, whether good or evil, must inevitably be suffered. Karma not suffered does not fade away, even in tens of millions of ages. So you have to suffer it. In gods or devas control the karmic distribution system to make sure we are held accountable for our actions. These devas or gods bring people together to fulfill their karmic debt. So these devas are described as like employees, maybe you can think about it, working at a park. And so we're here in Earth, and Earth is like the park for us, where we go through experiences and learn different things. And there's these employees who work at the park who are basically controlling, orchestrating everything, and that's what these devas are doing. So they're actually controlling forces of nature and things like that. They're even bringing people together to fulfill their karmic debt to each other. So if you're robbed by someone, the devas brought you and the robber together to fulfill your karmic debt. And so the robber is just being used as an instrument to met out justice that you created for yourself. But then Mr. Dadashri in his book said no one manages a system of karma. It happens naturally and automatically. There is no need for a middleman, so i.e. there is no need for these devas, which is exactly the opposite from what Mr. Anderson said in his book. And also described karma itself decides the fruits or experiences of our actions. So as you can see, these various descriptions don't all agree and contradict each other. So I was kind of intrigued when I came across this video on YouTube titled How Karma Works, explained by Mr. Hans Wilhelm, and notice it has over 1 million views, so it's not really an insignificant video. And he actually has a channel, Life Explained Videos, and looks like he has 73 of those. So he's getting his word out on these different topics. So I know he had a video on reincarnation, talking about forgiveness, all about animals, ego, guardian angels. He also had a website. And so he says that he's drawn his spiritual information from many paths, sources, seminars, teachers, and insight over the past 45 years. So it looks like he's been studying this area for quite a while. So let's see if he can shed some light on actually how karma works. And then the video, it's basically going through an example of a robber stealing someone's wallet while they're holding them at gunpoint. So this is just some of the points he made in the video. He said robbing someone, like an emotionally charged thought, word, or deed. So a deed or action you commit is the same as like a word or something you speak, or even a thought, that'll immediately get stored in 5 places. So this will get stored in your body, and he said it'll be in your cells or your genes. Assuming this type of action that you take, this robbery, for example, creating some type of karmic incrustation will be stored in your body or your cells and genes as some type of information. Second place it'll be stored at is in your soul, instead just like a computer stores information. The third place is in these Akashi records, or I've heard it described as Akashic records, and I talked a little bit about the Akashic records in a previous video about Jesus in India, the lost and missing years. So it's stored in these records, which are kind of like an ether, or this band of corona that's around the earth that stores all our thoughts, emotions, and our actions. So interesting. I wonder how that works. The fourth place that these are stored is in the spiritual, or he called in the material distant storing planets. So there's actually some planets out there in the solar system that operate like the cloud computer system that stores all these actions that we commit that eventually come back to us as karma. And the fifth place is they're actually stored in the soul of the person we have harmed. So in this example, it would be in the soul of the person that we're robbing. So he says they're stored in the soul of the person we have harmed. But from those other explanations of how karma works, have we really harmed the other person if they are receiving divine justice for their self-created karma? I thought the person caused their own loss, and the thief or the robber is just the instrument for returning their karma to them. And also, I thought there were no innocent victims. He also says we sow and then reap for the benefit of our soul. So the robber has sown karma by committing this robbery, and then he will reap the effects later, is basically what he's saying. But isn't the robber just helping to met out justice? And didn't the devas bring them together to fulfill karmic debt? And again, isn't there no such thing as an innocent victim? The person being robbed had to have done something in his prior life to be going through this situation that he's now suffering. He goes on to say that once the storing planets are either full of karma or have reached a certain position or constellation, so I'm assuming some type of maybe planetary formation in the solar system, then the information that we uploaded, which was number 4 on the list, from the actions that we did, will be downloaded back to us as karma. But he says once the storing planets are full of karma. But remember, Swami Tadatmananda says that we were born with an infinite number of karmas. So wouldn't the storing planets be full of karma all the time, an infinite amount? And how can you actually get rid of an actual infinite amount of karma, or an infinite amount of anything? You could never deplete it. And really, aren't the devas involved that are orchestrating all this, and not these storing planets returning the karma back to us once they get full? But he goes on to say that there's a way to dissolve these karmic effects, and it's the law of grace, or the path of forgiveness. So he says we must truly repent and feel the hurt that we cause to the other person. This will help us remember the pain we inflicted and not to do the same thing. Basically, we were supposed to learn from this bad thing that we did. But the robber is only being used as an instrument to met out justice the other person deserves. So now also the robber must repent and feel the hurt caused to this other person. But again, I thought there were no innocent victims, so the person he's robbing isn't innocent. He's deserving of it from his self-created karma. So I thought we were wholly and solely responsible. And when a person gets shot, or in this case robbed, isn't he suffering the effect of his past life's karma? He also says we need to go to the person and offer to make amends. Only when they have truly forgiven us will the karma be dissolved. But I thought the thief or the robber is just the instrument for returning this person's karma back to themselves. So I thought there were no innocent victims, so why do we need to go to them and offer amends? He says we must offer this grace toward anyone who has trespassed against us. But, I mean, if we take what's said as how karma works, how is the other person really trespassed against us? They were only being used as an instrument by the law of karma to met out justice that was due to us from our self-created karma. Again, there are no innocent victims, and I thought we were wholly solely responsible. So when we get shot, when we get robbed, get in a car accident, we're just suffering the effect of our past life's karma. And he says if the other person or the soul has not forgiven us, say for robbing them, we're bound to that person like a big iron chain for as long as it takes that person to forgive us. That could be hundreds of years. But, then again, we were only being used to met out justice to the other person due to their self-created karma. But now we have to wait hundreds of years for them to forgive us, if that's as long as it takes. And really, if they don't forgive us, aren't they really now blaming us for what happened to them and not wanting to offer us forgiveness for karma they created? So you're not following the teachings from the previous book by the Satguru that we shouldn't be blaming others. Again, I thought there were no innocent victims, and isn't the person solely responsible for causing their loss, and we're just instruments for returning their karma to them? And then Mr. Wilhelm goes on further to say that really none of us has to create or endure negative karma ever, his own words. There's a way we can get around having to endure and suffer negative karma forever. And we're given two choices basically in life. One is using insight, which is listening to our inner guidance, following the 10 Commandments or the Golden Rule that will keep us from creating negative karma and having to endure it, or we can use our free will in opposition to the insight stated above, and this will cause us to go through pain and suffering, and we keep enduring this negative karma. Because he basically said mankind is a slow and reluctant learner, so we'll probably keep enduring this suffering from karma. But I'm still confused because Mr. Wilhelm really, not like what the video said, doesn't really explain how karma works, because it contradicts these other sources that supposedly told you how karma works. So I'm still confused. So how do we know what to believe and who is correct? I think it's safe to say that someone doesn't have the truth, and because of that they're telling other people something that's not true or a lie. And if you're lying to someone, wouldn't this lead to the creation of negative karma, because you would be violating the Golden Rule? And I didn't talk about it here, but that's basically what one of the articles that I read, written by Tibetan Buddhists, basically said that if you're telling someone something that's not true, then you better watch out, because you're creating negative karma for yourself. Then Mr. Wilhelm said a woman by the name of Gabriela von Deutschberg, I guess, helped deepen his insights into, this subject of karma. And I believe in another website that he had talked about earlier, I came across the name of Gabriel Vitek, and it led me to this website titled The Land, the All Love, Helping Animals, Saving Lives. But information about the website from this About Us section said that we are followers of Jesus of Nazareth. We believe the All Spirit is also active in the 4 elements. Jesus of Nazareth taught us everything is vivified, or has this life force, because the great all Spirit of infinity lives in all things, in all beings, in every stone, in every plant, in every animal, as well as in the very basis of the soul of every human being. So this is classic Hindu or Eastern thought, that whatever this all Spirit that they're calling it seems the same thing as ultimate reality or Brahman, and that God is all and all is God, that our soul or Atman is one and the same as Brahman or the ultimate reality. We're just ignorant of that fact and just need to come to the self-realization that we're one and the same. And on a Wikipedia article, he said that the founding of Universal Life, which was one of the websites Mr. Wilhelm gave the address to, was through the teachings distributed by Gabrielle Vitek. These works were claimed to be revelations from Jesus Christ or other spiritual beings, which she received as a prophetess and promulgated. These are, along with the Sermon on the Mount and the Ten Commandments, the fundamental basis of the faith. And in 2003, she published her own Bible, Das ist mein Wort, This is my word, and you can find that on Amazon if you're interested and can read German. It also goes on to say that she met Christ himself, and on April 18, 1987, Christ allegedly spoke in a great revelation concerns a mystic school of thought in which God is considered to be in people and in all living things, according to Jesus' saying, "The kingdom of God is within you." And I've heard the Swami Paramahansa Yogananda, I guess, made some similar claim, but it's not interpreting it as traditional Orthodox Christianity would, but some esoteric hidden meaning that people like him and looks like Miss Vitek and others have this esoteric understanding, and by following only their teachings, they'll reveal this to you. So it seems like her teachings and what Mr. Wilhelm picked up are a mixture of Eastern and a blending of Christianity, where they've co-opted Jesus and kind of reinterpret the Bible and what's said to fit their own worldview. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the subject of your first birth, or our first birth onto the wheel of samsara, of birth, death, and rebirth, if you believe this doctrine of karma. I can't really find a whole lot written about your first form of what you're going to be born as, a human or animal or something else. But remember, Swami Tadatmananda basically said that we've had an infinite number of prior lives or births and an infinite number of karmas. And that was in this video here, Doctrine of Karma, Part 3. But I came across another video on YouTube that was titled, "What is Karma? Explanation, How Karma Works." So this was intriguing. Now they're basically saying they can explain how the system of karma works, and appeared to have a different understanding of first birth than that of Swami Tadatmananda. So this is a screenshot of the video from the Spiritual Science Research Foundation. And they also have a web page, and I found a similar article that was what they were talking about in the video. But they talked about two types of actions. So one was willful actions. These are incidents, thoughts, or actions and behavior that are totally within one's control. And as a rule of thumb, in the current time, or this current reincarnation that we're going through from between our first birth and last birth, that 35% of our lives are determined by our free will choices. And they talk also about these destined actions that are part of our lives, which is decided either by our deeds, and this is a key thing, and past lives or past events of this life that is not within the control of our free will. And in the current era, they constitute 65% of all actions. So the key is that they're based on deeds from our past lives or past events in this life. So it's past, something we've done. Then also from the video and article, it shows, and I'll show this, that we're having a first birth which comprises 100% of willful actions. So based on that, remember that willful actions are within our control, but destined actions are based on past lives or past deeds in past lives. So based on our first birth, there are no destined actions. So there's nothing related to past lives or past deeds. And also goes on to define about this first birth that it was like we had a blank piece of paper or a clean slate. Or i.e., if we have a blank piece of paper, a clean slate, we had no past karmas. So this contradicts Swami Tadatmananda, who said we had no first birth, because we had an infinite number of past or prior lives. And 2, we had an infinite number of karmas. And if so we had an infinite number of karmas, that means prior to our first birth, where he said we had none, then that means there is no clean slate if we have an infinite number of karmas. So I'll just play brief parts of the video. So here's Swami Tadatmananda.
According to the doctrine of karma, you've had an infinite number of prior births. Just as the universe had no first cycle of creation, so too you had no first birth.
So you had no first birth.
Why? Birth is due to past karma.
So birth is due to past karma.
But for your very first birth, how could there be any past karma? It's impossible.
That sounds logical and reasonable, but then he's going to have to offer up some explanation, which appears to me to be really illogical.
Therefore, you must have had an infinite number of prior lives. And in an infinite number of prior lives, you've certainly committed an infinite number of karmas.
So you have an infinite number of prior lives, and you've committed an infinite number of karmas. So that would mean you had basically no clean slate, because you have an infinite number of deeds or actions. So let's see what the Spiritual Science Research Foundation has to say.
Every time we are born or reincarnated on the earth plane of existence, we bring with us a small part of the accumulated accounts in our Sanchit Karma to settle. In this slide, the accumulated account is represented by that big long grey bar on top. The red portion in the bar represents the amount of accounts to be settled in the current lifetime. The accounts that we have to settle in our current lifetime is known as our destiny. Destiny is also known as prarabdha in Sanskrit. This pie chart shows the proportion of our lives which is destined versus the life which is within our own free will. Through spiritual research, we have found that for an average person, in the current era of Kali Yuga, 65% of his life is destined and 35% of his life is willful action. This means that approximately 65% of events that happen in our lives we have no control over. Now, in the case of the person's first birth...
Wow, that's interesting. So 65% of the actions or things that happen to you, you have no control over, they're saying. So here's these pie charts, and so they're showing a time where there was a first birth, now the current era, going to the last birth, and you can see that these destined actions that are based on past deeds and past lives is 0 at your first birth, increasing to 65%, and then at your last birth it's 100% destined action. So in your first birth it's all based on these free will actions which are not based on any past deeds or past karmas that you can have generated, like an infinite number that Swami Tadatmananda said that we have.
The universe. Willful action at that time was 100% and destiny was 0. But then as we begin to create accounts by our willful action, and as we progress towards the end of Kali Yuga, also known as the era of strife, and a person's last birth, the proportion of destined actions will be close to 100% and willful actions next to nil.
So that just brings up a question that, from what we've seen so far, so again, how does karma actually work? Many people claim to have the answer and speak as authorities, but no one actually seems to know. And again, I would think if you're telling people something that's not true, it's a lie, it appears you'd be generating more negative karma for yourself, because you're basically leading someone astray.